Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying on. My name is Tyler, event producer with the Bisnow team. I want to remind everyone when you get a chance to get some speed networking in and check out our Expo floor. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this panel, La Cuisine. Here's a video commercial from them. Thank you, La Cuisine. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the panel, Fred Zuttel, Head of Corporate Risk for Willis Towers Watson. Take it away, Fred.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Bisnow. Thank you, everybody, for being in today. It's great to be here with you today. As Tyler said, my name is Fred Zuttel. I lead Willis Towers Watson in Florida. We're the premier insurance, reinsurance, and surety brokerage firm in South Florida and in the U.S., serving clients in the real estate development and commercial real estate space. So today's topic is, I'm excited to be here with you today because we're going to talk about Fort Lauderdale, why it's a major draw for commercial real estate investment. And we've got a great group of panelists. So I think without further ado, the best thing would be to allow the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into it. So Adam, do you mind introducing yourself, maybe a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure, thank you, Fred. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Bisnow. Thank you, everybody, for your time and joining us on the panel. My name is Adam Tickton. I'm the president and broker of Tickton Real Estate, Commercial Real Estate Investment Services. We specialize in the sale of shopping centers across the state of Florida, single-tenant net lease properties nationally, and office buildings in the Tri-County area. We're also doing select development opportunities for multifamily development in Dade and Broward County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Greg?
Good afternoon, everyone. Greg Friedman, co-founder of BH3. Born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, started our company in 2009 during the last downturn. Recently moved our offices from Miami to Fort Lauderdale in a building that we own here in Progresso Village. So the timing couldn't have been more apropos for this panel. We moved in about a couple weeks ago. We're a full service integrated firm where we invest throughout the capital stacks in real estate from debt to equity, primarily in South Florida and New York.
Thank you, Greg. Nicole?
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me. Nicole Scheiman. I am with Edens. We are a vertically integrated large retail investor, developer, and owner. I oversee the Florida portfolio for Edens. We, like Greg, are also based in Fort Lauderdale, so we're just off Los Olas in terms of our headquarters for Florida. And we own a portfolio of assets all across the state, but also nationally. The platform at Edens is about 125 retail assets. We focus predominantly in the grocery anchored space. So about 90% of what we do is grocery anchored shopping center development, acquisition and operations. And the portfolio for us in Florida spans from Miami Beach all the way through northern Palm Beach, mostly focused on the East Coast, and very bullish on Fort Lauderdale, hence putting our office there, and excited to talk about all the exciting things happening in Fort Lauderdale today.
Perfect. Doug? Doug, you're muted. There you go.
Good morning. I'm Doug McCraw, the founder of the Fat Village Arts District in Fort Lauderdale. Very happy to be here today with everyone. We are an art technology district that has actually been about 20 years in the making. It's a unique concept where we create environment, a very creative environment for art and technology. And we have a lot of new plans, and we're looking very forward to what we're developing and to growing along with all that's happening in Fort Lauderdale.
Thank you very much, Doug. Nice to have you on the panel. And finally, Ronnie. Sorry, Ronnie, you're also muted as well.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
My name is Ronald Krongold. I'm co-managing partner of Krown Properties, which I was a founding member. We have built in Miami quite a bit. We built Jungle Island and managed Jungle Island, owned Jungle Island. Our last project in Miami was Midtown. We sold approximately 600 units that we owned in Midtown. And we were looking for to spread out for something that was an up and coming area. And we chose Fort Lauderdale because it is up and coming. And we're building 16 really deluxe, high-tech units on the Isle of Venice called 160 Marina Bay with 14 slips. And we're very excited about Fort Lauderdale and what's happening in Fort Lauderdale. And this is our first project here, but we expect that it will not be our last.
Perfect. Okay, so as you all can see, we have a great group of panelists. So we'll start getting into some of the questions so that you all can hear from them directly about why they find Fort Lauderdale to be such a unique and attractive place to live, play, and work in. So Greg, why don't we start with you, Greg? And I'm sure the rest of the panelists will jump into the discussion. But in your opinion, why is Fort Lauderdale such a major draw for commercial real estate investment?
Look, I think that I've been here for 40 years, and the city has continued to evolve and get better year over year, especially within the past decade. And even us as a firm, I mean, when we started the firm in 2009, we were based in Miami. Our deals were in Miami and New York, and everything was in Miami. And we kind of missed part of the early wave in Fort Lauderdale. And starting in about 2018 or 2019, we started heavily investing in Fort Lauderdale, where we acquired significant interest in Icon Los Olas from a private equity firm that was in that deal. We acquired a 3-acre site on Andrews and 3rd, which was called the Fat City site. We acquired in 2017 the building that I'm sitting in today, which is an adaptive reuse of a warehouse that had been abandoned, that was previously owned by Holman Automotive. And we felt that Fort Lauderdale was evolving from being that, you know, the sister city to Miami and Palm Beach, to really creating its own identity. For those of you that live here and work here, you've seen the evolution in terms of different pockets of neighborhoods and great food and beverage options, and the evolution of Flagler Village. And the Brightline was also a big component of that, where when you look at the demographics that are now here, those demographics that live within the CBD are so different than what they were a decade ago, or even 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago. And that's really exciting, because you have young well-employed people that are living in the city center. And that commerce just drives more commerce. And it's really exciting to see from our perspective.
Thank you, Greg. Anybody have anything to add to that, or maybe want to share their own perspective?
I'll jump in a little bit, I guess, from the retail perspective in terms of, why we as Edens have invested in Fort Lauderdale and the broader Broward area for a long time and continue to be really long on its potential. I think when you look at Fort Lauderdale from a market perspective, with that retail lens, the things you like to see are strong demographics, both from an income and from a density perspective. And I think, interestingly, though, historically, Miami has always, as Greg noted, been sort of a priority from an investment perspective for a lot of national investors. If you actually dig down into the data at the ground level in Fort Lauderdale and Broward more generally is actually more attractive than the dynamics just from a data perspective in Miami. So household incomes, as an example, are higher in Fort Lauderdale and Broward than what you would see in Miami. Density is obviously pretty high in Miami, but I think there are pockets, and obviously this has emerged particularly in the last decade, with a lot of densification that's happened in the downtown core. So I think from a dynamics perspective, you have good demos, which is really, really attractive as a general investment vehicle. I think you also have the benefit of Fort Lauderdale really geographically sitting at the center of the Tri-County area and being incredibly accessible both to Miami and to Palm Beach, and Brightline and other developments have supported that. But geographically, you really benefit from that centrality in terms of access to jobs, access to education. And I think that's why you see a lot of high value demographics moving to Fort Lauderdale. So those are some of the dynamics I think that have made it attractive and have continued to become more and more attractive over time. You have the airport, you have the port, you have some really substantial demand drivers and infrastructure that exists in Broward and Fort Lauderdale that isn't going away, that serves as a fantastic underpinning from an investment perspective. And then I think, interestingly, as we've experienced the last year of COVID, there's a number of factors and overlays that I think make Fort Lauderdale even more attractive and bolsters its position further. The desire to live in a highly amenitized geography, I think, is more true now than ever. And the movement towards remote work and access to outdoor amenities has become a primary decision driver for businesses and people in terms of where they live. So I think Fort Lauderdale's access to the beach, I think the focus on open space and parks, which is something that we focus on a lot at our properties in terms of delivering the consumer experience, I think set Fort Lauderdale apart. I know Fort Lauderdale is working on developing a trail system, the Mockingbird Trail, which is 8 miles of linear park, which is not dissimilar to what is happening in Miami with the Underline. And so I think a lot of what consumers and businesses are looking for are really developing in a really exciting way in Fort Lauderdale. And that's why we've chosen to invest capital here.
Nicole just hit on a really great point. I mean, she hit on 30 good points as she gave a rundown. But the reason why we chose Fort Lauderdale to build these condos is because of who's coming here and what they're looking for. We're building, for example, 3,000 square feet, super technology, smart technology, right on in line with what's going on with the pandemic. You take your elevator only to your unit. There's only one other person on the elevator for one other unit. The security is really terrific. And why come to Fort Lauderdale? Schools are good. We're doing a webinar, Fortune webinar tomorrow that tells you about the difference in the taxes in the Northeast, New York, in New Jersey, opposed to living in Florida, especially South Florida. It's such a friendly area to live in. And as Nicole said, our units are going to be 5 minutes from the beach. You can walk to the beach. You can take a stroll down Las Olas. It's safe. There's nothing to worry about. You have good shops. You have good food, and you can live in Fort Lauderdale now. And because of the building of all the office buildings and so forth, you can work in Fort Lauderdale. But if you do work in Miami, you're 30 minutes from Miami with the Brightline. So and Fort Lauderdale is friendly to developers. So it's a really good place to live. It's a place to invest in, and it's a place to build in. So you got the airports, you got the seaports, Yeah, from our apartments, you can take a boat out of your marina and be out in the Atlantic Ocean in 15 minutes and be in Bimini in 2 hours. I mean, there's just so much that is offered in this upscale community of Fort Lauderdale that this is the place. It's not the next place. It's the place that's getting better.
So from an investment standpoint, we see a lot of money coming down here from all over the country. I know that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about on this panel. You know, money from New York, money from California, Chicago, but people are deciding where should they go. You know, should they go to Fort Lauderdale? Should they go to Palm Beach? Should they go to Miami? And from an investment standpoint, you know, people are looking for a place to live, but they're also looking for a place to invest. And you know, the biggest thing that people look for with investing is, are they going to make money, and are they not going to lose money? And if they make money, how much money are they going to make? And from a risk perspective, I think that's what most investors look for. And I think the risk is very low for people to invest in Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale is booming once again. You know, COVID fortunately is getting further and further behind us. But I also think that we're experiencing what some people are calling a COVID boom. You know, where you know, a lot of people want to be here because Florida has really opened up. You know, you mentioned, I think Greg, you mentioned earlier in the call that places like New York have really shut down. Chicago is shut down. But our governor has opened up the state of Florida. The restaurants are open. There's a lot of outdoor seating. Obviously, we have the sunshine. So we're seeing a huge amount of people, you know, moving down here, bringing their equity, and we're seeing prices going up. You know, prices are going up, rents are going up, and it's an exciting place to be again.
Thank you. And Doug, I'd be curious to hear from you. I mean, I know that, you know, Fat Village has sort of been in effect and it's been a long-term project for you. And I'd love to understand how that's changed maybe in the last year, a couple of years, as we've seen some of that migration from wealthy folks from out of state, hedge funds, tech firms, everything that's happening and how that's impacting your project specifically.
Sure. Well, certainly in terms of the art walks or our public related projects, we basically just sort of shut down for a year because a lot of our activities are highly public. But beginning in January of this year, we decided to start with doing a real soft event schedule, which we call open houses. And we're doing an open house. We did an open house in January. We're doing another open house in February. And then we want to do what I'll call a soft art walk in March. And we're finding that certainly in our neighborhood, you know, people have been real hungry for activities or things they can do. We've been very careful to be respectful, I think, of guidelines and things, but it's been very, very well received by the public and the community. I also would add to this conversation that the location of Fort Lauderdale being so central between Miami and Palm Beach, that we actually in Fat Village with our events, we have quite a draw from both of those areas. And we're finding that certainly when the Bright Line was active, that you know, our attendance was getting more diverse between all of these market areas in South Florida. So we really feel like Fort Lauderdale as a location just could not be more important.
So let's talk about that more. And I think maybe this is a good question for you, Ronnie, with an active condo project. Why do you think people would choose Fort Lauderdale over Miami or Palm Beach? And you started talking about this a little bit, but I think it's really important because if you are from out of state and you're trying to make a decision as to, you know, where to establish your roots, perhaps where to establish your business, or where you yourself and your family want to move. I mean, South Florida is a great place, right? And I think it's interesting in particular because so many of you either live or had your offices in Miami and are moving them or have moved them to Fort Lauderdale. So I'd love to understand maybe a little bit about that. Maybe Ronnie, we can start with you and the thesis of that project and the type of buyers, and then maybe talk a little bit more about sort of why Fort Lauderdale, if you will.
You know, there's a lot of reasons that I can come up with that's happening, and the more I'm up here, the more I see it. First of all, it's one of the foremost marine communities in the United States, not just in Florida, in the United States. Boating in Fort Lauderdale is a way of life, so that's one reason. The other reason is that it seems that the neighborhoods, the older neighborhoods are being redone. The newer neighborhoods are coming up with spectacular homes, spectacular condominiums, and the area is so conducive to getting places. For example, it was mentioned about the Bright Line. The Bright Line has opened up a whole new world for Fort Lauderdale because you can access every one of your sporting events, whether it's football, baseball, the basketball, from Fort Lauderdale, and live in a really nice area and be in one of these sporting events in a very short period of time. Or if you want to go to Palm Beach and walk in their super expensive but very nice shopping areas, you're 30 minutes away. And the atmosphere in Fort Lauderdale, although upscale, is relaxed. You see the people on Las Olas Boulevard, they're wearing shorts, they're very comfortable, and they're happy to be there. So it's a small town, but yet it's going to have the big town feel because you're going to be able to get anything and everything you want in Fort Lauderdale. And you mentioned about our condominiums, we're building towards that end. In other words, we're building for those people, very luxurious, sub-zero, merely that type of thing, high tech for the crowds that are coming down. They expect that, turn up and turn down the heat on the shower with voice activated equipment, open your door with your telephone. I mean, there's just so many things that we can do in Fort Lauderdale that we might not do in Miami, or even in Palm Beach. I just can't say enough about the area. It's just a great area, and also Adam mentioned about the tax attributes, and again, I say that the crime compared to what's going on in some of these other cities and in different areas of some of our big cities, even in Florida, it just doesn't seem to affect us in Fort Lauderdale.
Hey, Fred, just to add to that, I mean, we're talking about people coming down from different places. South Florida has always been the sixth borough of New York City. So, we're sitting here today, it's the end of February. I'll tell you that our belief is that the bench is so deep of people coming here that this panel could theoretically just be on South Florida in its entirety, because we get phone calls every day. We have real investments in Dade County and Broward County and Palm Beach County every day from business leaders and entrepreneurs, real companies that are saying, hey, we're leaving. And most of those calls are now coming from California and other places, aside from just escaping New York City. So I think that South Florida, there's a great bull case for South Florida in general. Certain people want to be in Palm Beach for the reasons they want to be in Palm Beach. Certain people want to be in Miami for those reasons. And Fort Lauderdale is a great offering for all the reasons that everyone's already said. But the one thing that hasn't been talked about is this is fairly new, meaning we went from believing we had too much lingering condo product at our project Privé in Aventura. We had remnant condo product from 2019 and 2020, and all of a sudden from September 1st of 2020 until now, we're now saying we wish we had more product. We've looked at buying other sites for new condo development because we think that this is not short-lived. We think that this is a demand change in people's lives that was hyper accelerated as a result of COVID. And they've realized that they want to have a lifestyle. They want to be in a place that they're welcome. And in some of these environments that they're fleeing from, it's almost become that entrepreneurs and business leaders and successful people have become, the devils, and business people and their employees want to be in a place where they're embraced. And the mayors of our respective cities have done a great job of that. For Fort Lauderdale on the Bright Line, we're talking about getting sporting events, but to us, the bigger value proposition for Bright Line is that if you're one of those employers, right, and you have 200,000 square feet in Manhattan, and now you only need 100,000 square feet, you can come to a market like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, or Palm Beach, and pull from a talent pool of 6 million employees. You're not making your decision now based on, am I going to just Fort Lauderdale? Am I going to just Miami? And who can I pull? And what talent pool is there? If you're in Fort Lauderdale, of those 3 cities in the middle, you can now pull from 6 million people within that half-hour commute, which we think is a real paradigm shift.
That's really interesting. And, I'd like to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
I was just Fred, quickly going to jump in, Greg, that I think what you shared really resonates, and it's consistent with what we've been seeing. And I'd say it's not just people from a migration perspective that are recognizing those dynamics and choosing Fort Lauderdale, but it's also businesses. And so, in the context of our business, we own, as an example, a Whole Foods shopping center on Federal Highway, just north of downtown Fort Lauderdale, called River Market. And it's been fascinating to see over the last 5 or so years how big businesses, retail businesses, have decided to look at Fort Lauderdale for the first time ever. As an example, Shake Shack is obviously a huge concept that's been all across New York and is now beginning to roll out more broadly. They went to Miami first and opened 3 locations, but their first location outside of Miami in Florida was effectively at our shopping center on the out parcel in Fort Lauderdale. And that deal opened about 2 years ago. And it's been fascinating to see local retail businesses that are US based beginning to look at Fort Lauderdale as a real destination for their business. Whereas historically they'd say, we only need units in Miami. They now are taking the position that, given the densification and the growth that's occurring, that they want to participate in that growth. So, Shake Shack has come to our shopping center. Dry Bar, their only location in Broward County at the time, opened at our shopping center. Lululemon, though they have a couple locations in Broward County, have said, look, we need a position in Fort Lauderdale, and their performance at our location is one of the best in the state. And so it's just been interesting to see how retailers perceive Fort Lauderdale. I think they see it as a huge growth platform for their business, but there's also a value orientation around it. There's an opportunity to land in Fort Lauderdale at rent levels that are a little bit more within reach relative to what you might see in some core Miami markets. And interestingly, in a lot of instances, the sales that these businesses can achieve in Fort Lauderdale is equal or greater at a lower occupancy cost in terms of rent. And so certainly that value equation is starting to change as Fort Lauderdale becomes more on the map. And, obviously there's more demand and so on. But I still think businesses and consumers alike see some form of value arbitrage associated with landing in Fort Lauderdale versus in Miami, whether it's a condo price per foot or getting a larger unit, or on the retail side paying slightly less per foot, but really still being able to capture this demand and upside, which I think has made it such an attractive play for businesses and people.
From an investment perspective, I do think, I know we're talking about Fort Lauderdale, but I think that anybody who's going to invest in commercial properties in Fort Lauderdale is also going to look at Miami, Palm Beach. I think that most investors who come here from other areas look at it as really the South Florida market. We call it here the Tri-County area. I think that when people are looking to move somewhere and to live somewhere, it's a very, personal decision. People are looking, Fort Lauderdale is very different than Miami, which is very different than Palm Beach. But from an investment standpoint, I think most people who invest in Miami-Dade, Broward is adjacent to Dade County, obviously. Palm Beach is just north of that. I think most people who look at investing, whether it's, shopping centers, Nicole, you're doing shopping centers, office buildings, they're going to look at, how are the tenants doing, what's happening with the rents. Big question right now in COVID is the office buildings, are people working remotely? Are they going back to the office? We're seeing occupancy rates for office properties skyrocketing. which I think is very interesting because in other areas like New York, I hear in Manhattan, for example, the occupancy of office properties is about 10%. People are working from home. People are actually working from South Florida who have offices in New York. And so that's actually been driving a lot of the rents up. We took a number of properties out to the market last year, and when COVID hit, it was a very scary time. Obviously, we had a lot of deals fall apart, but almost every single one of those came back together again. And now we have properties that we're getting offers higher than we were before COVID because the occupancy rates in, for example, some office buildings that we're marketing, the occupancy rates are higher than they were in February last year before COVID. So I think the market's back. I think the market's very strong. There's a lot of people that are very aggressively looking for deals right now. It's hard to find deals. There's deals that are out there, but it's a great place to invest. And I think a lot of people want to be in Fort Lauderdale for all the reasons that you mentioned. And also, lastly, I want to mention that, there's a lot of challenges still out there because we're not through COVID yet. People are still unfortunately getting sick. And there's a lot of businesses and industries that are also still taking a hit. You think about, we talked about Brightline, Ronnie, you talked about Brightline and how that has a positive impact on the projects. A lot of people are not taking public transportation yet because they're still afraid of COVID. We have industries like the cruise lines in the port, which is a major driver for Fort Lauderdale and Broward County, which the cruise ships are still not working. But it's very interesting to me that businesses are thriving, restaurants are thriving, retail, office. It really is thriving because so many people are coming down here to invest, and people locally are also, largely doing well, irrespective of some of those industries. And when they come back, I think Fort Lauderdale and South Florida is going to boom more than ever.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think that, the case, look, it's not hard to understand how, folks moving to South Florida and moving to Fort Lauderdale would drive, sales of condominiums or development of multifamily. But I just find it so interesting in listening to Nicole speak and also Adam specifically about retail and how, suddenly this is a market that large national firms want to be in. I'd be curious to understand from both you, Nicole, and Adam, right, how, maybe some of the softer side of this with smaller or more middle market businesses and how those in retail have been affected and whether or not that's had any impact on your business or development prospects.
Nicole, you want to start out?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. And I'll also note, Doug, I think in your business, you could probably give some valuable insight too on sort of the local, on the local level. So please jump in. But, certainly, I think you still continue to see strength in terms of the interest from local and regional players in Broward and Fort Lauderdale. I actually think in many ways the arrival of a lot of the national tenancy to Fort Lauderdale bolsters the local ecosystem, because ultimately you still have more trips and more dwell time coming to these retail locations, which can really benefit local and regional players. And I'll tell you from a consumer perspective, as great as it is that Fort Lauderdale now has its first Shake Shack, which is the deal we did, now has their, commensurate supply of Lululemons and Dry Bars and Sephora's, et cetera. I think the consumer really, really demands and enjoys the local regional offering. And as we think about the merchandising at our shopping centers, talking specifically about this Whole Foods Center on Federal Highway, we think very critically about how do we ensure that there is an appropriate local presence to bring that consumer out to. And so I think they're pretty symbiotic. There's no question that with the COVID overlay, it's been a very challenging time for that sort of tenancy, right? When you don't have a deep balance sheet, when you don't have the banking relationships, sustaining downtime, whether it be because of government closures or because of just soft demand because of the nature of the virus, a lot of those small and medium businesses have really suffered. And, us being a large developer with the ability to be somewhat flexible, we've identified who we believe to be, the best in class locals and regionals and worked with them to try to ensure that their business can survive through this term. But my hope is that coming out of COVID, there will be still a lot of businesses that can be successful and emerge, though it's been really, really challenging. And I think that what Doug is doing and a lot of examples of the neighborhood creation that's happening in Fort Lauderdale is all about small and local business. And we really have small and local business to thank for the creation of that village, Flagler Village. Los Olas historically has had a lot of these kind of boutique local offerings. And I think that creates character and culture which is what consumers want.
Yeah, I would just adding to that say that, you know, our focus has really been about, with all that we do, it's been about an experience and making that experience unique so that when there's a reason that people come here, or as we develop out, there's a reason people want to live here, be here. You know, the project that we have planned right now is going to be a real game changer, we feel like, in Fort Lauderdale, and that we're building this creative environment that's part technology, part food restaurant. We'll have a new art center in it. And generally speaking, especially in my focus really is more on the art end of it. That is a piece that's very, very hard to get integrated in as a real business activity environment into sort of a neighborhood. But we feel like with the DNA that we have evolved here in Fat Village, that we find that the tech companies that are coming, they're very, very interested in the arts and in what those activities might be. So we think of Fat Village as a live, work, play, stay, if you will, within a location, but it also is highly integrated into the community and the city around it. So there, you know, that's becomes a focus for a lot of other, say, apartment developers, other accessory retail uses, those kinds of things. It's we really think of ourselves as sort of a culture anchor, if you will, of the city, and that location then draws from lots of areas around it, whether it's in Broward County or Miami or Palm Beach.
Adam, did you have anything you wanted to add on that note?
Sure. You know, I think the cultural component is very important for the growth of the city. You know, Doug, I think the work you're doing is fantastic. And you know, in going back to, you know, some of the things that you were mentioning before, Fred and Nicole, about the, you know, the retailers and the small businesses. You know, I think the small businesses are the backbone of the community. I think it's very important that the restaurateurs and small business owners are supported by the government, by their landlords, which is not always easy to do for landlords to support their tenants. But I think, you know, the relationship between the landlord and the tenant is very important through what's happened, so that they can really help each other to work through this. You know, we're seeing a lot of the retailers doing better and better as things seem to be opening up here. You know, we've got the vaccine coming soon. I think everybody's, you know, excited about that and optimistic for themselves personally, their families, and also for their communities. But we're seeing the restaurants doing better and better. You know, you know, there's a lot of outdoor space, and so we're seeing a lot of restaurants are full, a lot of the venues are full. I do think in the beginning, when COVID first hit, a lot of the small businesses, unfortunately went out of business, and you know, they got hit hard. But I think that for the most part, everybody who's made it to this point, you know, with the support of you know, of the community, their landlords, municipality, and so on, I think that people are hopeful that they're going to make it through. There is a new round of stimulus, the PPP2. A lot of people are taking advantage of that now. And so, you know, here we are in the tail end of February, it's almost March. And I think that everybody thinks that for the most part, you know, June, July, people are going to be vaccinated. People are really, there's a lot of, you know, huge pent up demand, I think, and these small businesses, I think, are going to really benefit, especially when tourism comes back. I mean, the construction is still there. The developers haven't really, you know, missed a beat. They haven't really slowed down, but tourism is going to come back. And, you know, I think that a lot of these small businesses and small restaurateurs and retailers are going to really benefit from that.
I again want to just put an emphasis on with regard to business coming into Fort Lauderdale, but actually coming into the state of Florida. okay, when we're talking about bringing additional people into the commercial areas, to the office buildings, and of course that helps us sell the condominiums and so forth, we should be really talking about the difference between Northeast and Fort Lauderdale and South Florida. I mean, we have so many different things that we can say. You know, the web seminar that we're putting on, let me give you a phone number, okay, 954-939-0440. If you dial that 954-939-0440, that'll give you the website for that seminar. And you should really listen. I mean, it's dramatically different doing business and living in New York and New Jersey than it is living in Miami. And with the economy, we don't know where the economy is going now with the new administration and so forth and so on. So it becomes even more important to these people. That's why we're getting Goldman Sachs and the different companies from New York are moving in droves to South Florida. Fort Lauderdale can pick up a lot of that business because it's a great place to live. But listen to that seminar, you'll really get a lot out of it.
So I think we only have a few minutes left, but I just wanted to maybe get everybody's quick reaction on one thought. There was an article that came out 4 or 5 days ago in the Miami Herald that speaks to the fact that the median home price in Miami is something like $470,000. As you all know, about 2 years ago, that number was like $350,000. So clearly we're in the midst of some sort of real estate boom. So how do you think this is sustainable? And how do you see Fort Lauderdale both benefiting from it, but also addressing sort of what is more than likely a looming affordability crisis?
You know,
I'm happy to take that if you want, Fred. It's been an ongoing issue, and rising real estate prices, which are a factor in large part to not only COVID, but historically low interest rates. Because at the end of the day, most people, when they're buying a house, they're buying payment, not price. They can afford to spend X amount of dollars per month on housing, and as rates go down, prices go up, and that's just a byproduct that exists. I think that in each of the respective cities in the Tri-County area, this has been a focus of the politicians that are in power, and they've made strides towards incorporating requirements for affordable workforce housing. Depending on which county, there's a big distinction between the two. Workforce housing is meant for people that have median incomes within certain percentages of average wages. Affordable is for more lower income. So in Fort Lauderdale, there has been forward momentum for requiring developers to have certain percentage of affordable or workforce housing units. We were on a project in Delray where we wanted to shift to 100% workforce housing. So it is a necessary item, and it needs to be addressed. The way that this historically got addressed in other bigger cities is that they provided private developers with incentives. So in New York, there was the 80-20 rule, but if you did more affordable housing, you could get more density, more FAR, more intensity, relief on certain other issues. And the way to do that is through commerce, in our opinion, that you incentivize the private marketplace to actually step up and deliver that to the community. Because if you can't have your police officers, your teachers, your nurses living in the community that you live in, eventually that's a self-deprecating cycle where you're going to be in the city that doesn't have those essential people. So it's paramount that it gets addressed. I think that we're doing an okay job. There's a lot of room for an improvement there.
Thank you for that, Greg. Any other final comments from anyone? Before we have to end, I think we only have a couple of minutes left. Okay.
I would say that I think the housing issue here is probably one of the biggest challenges consistently facing all of South Florida. And I think it's on one side of it, you've got how do we produce the housing units? I think on the other side of it, it's very important to have, because we have a lot of urban area here or suburban area here. It's very important for us to think about the transportation infrastructure so that wherever those people live within those communities, that they're able to get to and from their jobs. I think that should be a major focus for everyone in South Florida today as we continue to increase density and build out.
All right. Well, hey, great job today. I hope all of you out there really enjoyed this discussion. Thank you to our panelists and all of our speakers today. A couple of quick things. Recordings of these sessions will be available within about an hour of this session completing. And hey, we don't have to be done. Stay as long as you'd like to continue to network and chat with our speed networking or more controlled networking sessions. You're going to receive a survey following this event. Please fill that out as honestly as possible. We are always looking to improve on what we do here. But with that, I'd like to say, Nicole, Greg, Fred, Adam, Doug, and Ronnie, thank you so much for closing us out today. Everybody go enjoy. Thank you, Fort Lauderdale, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.